Welcome to the Moon God Pod. I'm your host, JYLEX, and today we got one of my OG Aku members. CCIEBryan is joining us from across the pond. I'm up late, he's up early, and that's the beauty of global technology these days. We can connect it anytime, any day. Want to say, man, first of all, it was a pleasure to meet you at Art Basel. I believe it was now 2 years ago. At the first
Yep.
world, and really connected, had a good time with you, and good to see you again, man. Like we get this faceless interaction, in the Web3 space, whether it's Twitter or in Discord. But good to see you, and how are you doing this morning, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. Either open, I'm moving, I'm functional. I think
Yeah.
that's the main thing. That's the main thing. After that, everything else is good.
So you, like so many people in this space, we have our Web3 life and then we have our real world life. So I want to take it back to what was your first introduction into just crypto in general, and like kind of give me like a time frame as to when you kind of made like your first crypto purchase, and what drew you to it.
I think it was early 2017 and Coinbase.
Coinbase.
Funny enough, yeah. It was Coinbase. I was on the bus and then somebody else had said, "Oh, they're buying some ETH." I'm like, "Oh, what they're buying ETH?" And then I realized actually one of my friends probably about 3 years before that was talking about he was going to get a Bitcoin.
Hmm.
And I was at the time like, "Oh, why are you getting a Bitcoin? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure about this whole Bitcoin thing. Oh, whatever, just do what you're going to do anyway." And I've been here all day. And that was the last I kind of heard of it. And then I was on a bus and someone was talking about ETH and Coinbase. And then I remember getting into the office and then I thought, "Oh, what's this ETH and Coinbase?" And then someone else said, oh yeah, this ETH." I'm like, "ETH? Coinbase?" And then it kind of went from there. And then I kind of didn't want to let on that I didn't know what on earth these guys are talking about. And then when I got home, I was like, "Oh, what's ETH? What's Coinbase?" And then that same night, I purchased some ETH.
So what time frame are we looking at? Because 2017 is a pretty hot year and a very
Yeah, yeah,
so
right at the beginning of 2017, to be honest,
yeah.
right at the beginning. And I remember it being at the beginning because at the time you couldn't, in the UK anyway, you couldn't really purchase any amounts of ETH. It was all maximum £20
Oh,
worth. Yeah, it was very small, and then you had to go through all this identity checks with Coinbase, and then it was restricted on what you could purchase and what you couldn't, and you could only really purchase ETH and BTC at the time, and so forth. Okay, I'll purchase a little bit, and I just ended up purchasing a little tiny bit on one day, and I thought, oh, then I gave it a couple of days, and I purchased a little tiny bit more, and then it went up a little bit, and then I said, "Oh, I'll purchase a little bit more of it." And
yeah.
it went up a little bit, and I said, "Oh, I'll purchase a little bit more of it." And then I remember going into the office and telling everybody, "Oh, have you heard about this ETH?" And then said, "Oh, no, what's this ETH?" Then I started telling everybody about it in the office, and then it just kind of went from there. And then actually, funny enough, Coinbase actually banned me
Ah,
after about 3 weeks for doing too many purchases.
oh, look at you, you whale.
Yeah. No, as I said, you can only purchase about 20, £30.
So let me ask you this, because I'm not gonna dox your age here.
Mm,
But you know, I'm 41, and
mm,
you know, I had heard, for me, the first time I heard about Bitcoin
mm,
was really like probably 2012, 2011.
mm, mm,
And I was buying, I was getting the services of this web dev, and he was building me a website, and he was like, just pay me in Bitcoin. And I was like,
right,
what is that? And
right,
this is
right.
back when, like, Bitcoin was the infamous, like, Bitcoin.
Yeah, and
Yeah. And it's funny because once I really dove in, I actually went back to that old computer and I was like, did I ever end up buying any Bitcoin?
right,
Trying to
right,
figure it
right.
out. Like, maybe I luck box and find a folder with like 100 Bitcoin, or something. Um, so the reason I bring that up is with just like age wise.
Mm.
How was that like did you kind of first vision it as kind of just like a bit of just a gamble, like like buying a lottery ticket, or like what was that chasm that you had to cross, because it's definitely
Uh,
like something that's very new, and sometimes
yeah,
it can be a little dinosaurish.
yeah. I think I'd probably say the first time I'd heard of Bitcoin was probably about 2013, but I just ignored it. To be honest, to be frank, I kind of just completely ignored it. Like, okay, Bitcoin, great. Okay, somebody's bought pizza with it. Okay, great. They was doing a documentary on BBC where someone stayed in a house over the week and only could spend Bitcoin, and they were trying to see what if they could survive for the week. And I
Yeah.
think they survived for about 2 days probably with the things that they could buy with Bitcoin at the time. And I kind of just thought, oh, okay, well, great. And then, as I said, when I got to 2017, then as I said, my friend bought some Bitcoin, and I thought, oh, well, what was the point in that? And then I just kind of ignored it. And then, as I said, when we got to 2017, I heard about it on the bus, and then I thought, well, my first thought was, why not? My first thought was, what is this thing? And I'm kind of in the technology space anyway. So I thought, oh, well, maybe I should buy. And then I thought, oh, it seems like it's going to go up. And then I thought, oh, let me have a bit more of a dig into what it actually is and what it's all about. And
Mhm.
then the next thing I knew, this ICO craziness started happening.
Right.
And I thought, oh, maybe it could do something, or maybe it's sensible. Maybe this whole decentralized thing means something or can do something. And then, as I said, the ICO craziness just took over, and like, oh well, actually, here's an ICO that's gonna let out houses or let out flats for people. I said, and I was thinking, oh yeah, great ICO. Obviously, it's not a great. Obviously, it wasn't great in hindsight looking back at it. But
Yeah.
at the time, you thought, oh, maybe this whole decentralized thing could do something or can be something. The thought of it was a nice thought. It was a very nice thought.
So I definitely want to kind of compare the ICO bear market, if you will, to
Mm,
where we're currently in and what I guess is considered the NFT bear market. But
mm,
before we get there, so take me to where, like, so you've bought it, you've wet your beak, and then
mm.
when did you first like purchase your first NFT, and how did that come about?
I purchased my first NFT. Funny enough, was a CryptoPunk. Funny
Oh,
enough, that was my first NFT.
and do we still
And
have the
no, 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 no. Oh, actually, I tell you, like, it wasn't a CryptoPunk. About 40 minutes before I purchased the CryptoPunk, I bought Top Shot.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was my first. That was my first entry into NFTs. Was the NBA Top Shot, and on the same night, I thought, oh, I've looked at CryptoPunk for about the last month, and I
Mm.
thought, oh, maybe I'll just get a CryptoPunk. It looks quite interesting,
Yeah.
and I bought one, and I thought, okay, cool, I've got a CryptoPunk, fair enough, but I've got these NBA Top Shots. that, was my, that was my first thing, and I remember coming back home, and I said to the other half, oh, I've got. You never guess what I spent a reasonable amount of money on tonight. And she's like, oh, what? I said, oh, look, these NBA little videos called NBA Top Shots. And she said,
Yeah.
oh, how much did you spend on that? I said, couple hundred.
Yeah.
What? A couple £100 on these little videos? Why can't you just take a little video?
So when you got into NBA Top Shot, were you because there was a moment, and this is when me and Lovox first came on the Top Shot, where you could buy a pack, and
Mm,
like they were just sitting there, like the first series one, and that was so, we were just like, well, let's just buy a couple, and
mm,
our first night we were just buying them, and it's like it was cool, grasp the idea of it, uh,
mm,
and what it could be. But we weren't even really buying, knowing what we were really getting.
yeah.
Like
So,
especially the rocket trajectory that happened
yeah.
coming months. So what was your timeline? And it's funny because like the punks, like it was kind of like in my recollection, it was almost like everybody was in the Top Shot at that moment, but then the real,
Yeah,
I don't want to
yeah.
say the smarter people in the room, but the smarter
Mm.
people in the room like started popping up and having these punks as their profile pic. And I just remember looking and sitting there saying, like, they're paying $3,000-$4,000 for
Yeah,
this. And I thought it
yeah.
was silly. And then of course I don't know what your timeline when you first got your punk was.
So the NBA Top Shot I got before the first pack. They hadn't released any packs yet. You could only buy off the market. You could
Oh,
only buy off somebody else. So there wasn't any packs. There wasn't that whole right. This is season one, the first pack thing. Yeah.
oh
The only
wow.
people that had packs were the people that were doing the testing, etc., etc.
Interesting.
So I didn't purchase a pack. What I done, my first purchase was a LeBron James, and there was another one. There were two. There was one LeBron James and one other one. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to buy a LeBron James. That makes the most amount of sense to me.
Don't
So I
don't tell
would,
me you didn't buy like a LeBron Cosmic or something crazy.
not funny enough, I was going to, but the Cosmics were there for probably about 250. And then you had the legendary ones. You had all the different LeBrons that were there. And I thought, oh, what's the point in getting the Cosmic one where the other legendary one kind of looks the same? So I
Yeah,
ended up with a legendary LeBron. Obviously everything's in hindsight, right? So I ended up with a legendary LeBron at the time, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, great,
yeah.
okay, top shot. Now I've got this little video, and then as I said, literally half an hour after that, I said, oh, I've been looking at these punks. Now that I've got one of these, let me get a punk.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me get a punk, and that's how I ended up with a punk. Funny enough,
So the big question is, do you still have that LeBron and that Punk?
I do have the LeBron. Do
Okay.
have the LeBron still. I do not have my original punk.
Do you have another?
I
Do you
I've
have?
got another one. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Before my Aku profile, my profile was a punk. So I've still
Yeah.
got that Yeah, I've still got that profile picture, which was the punk. That I'm just gonna keep. There's no need. But as I said before, when I got home that night, I was speaking to them half, and she was just like, "What?" I said, "Oh, it's about the metaverse and NFTs." She
That's
said, "The
awesome.
metaverse." Well,
It's such an interesting case study, if you will, of just pure timing. Like if you kind of stumbled across it, like you know, I'm my Eskimos love ox, and he's always, he was around during the ICO boom, and so he's always keeping his nose in new things, and then you have like the meteoric rise of Top Shot, but at that same time, just art in NFTs in general, you've got the explosion of Nifty Gateway, where like literally
yeah,
you could
yeah.
buy anything. So do we have Beeple in the collection as well?
No,
Because that's about the
no.
same time too. Like,
No, no, funny enough, I looked and I said, oh, maybe no. And I passed. I
yeah,
passed. As I said, at the time what I was planning to do was get
yeah,
um, another punk. Yeah. And then I ended up instead of getting another punk, I ended up getting a lot more NBA Top Shots. I was really on the whole, oh, NBA, oh, yeah. So everybody was just the whole
yeah, yeah.
video, okay, the pack's getting released. Oh, they had ex-NBA players on the stream. They just it was just like, oh,
I mean, there was a moment, talk about fumbling the ball. There was a moment where the cheapest Top Shot moment you could get was, I want to say, as high as $90, maybe
yeah,
50
yeah,
is
yeah,
probably, but like,
yeah.
you know, and at the time it even seemed like a good buy. And then, we know what has happened.
We know what's happened. Yeah,
I don't want to berate Top Shot, but boy, like you just had the world by the,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
you really kind of fumbled it. So you're saying like you weren't there for like people, but you've probably got your eye on Nifty. When does Aku come into the picture? When does Micah Johnson hit your radar?
Uh, Probably about chapter. I'll say in chapters. But
Mm,
by the time we got to chapter, it was chapter 4. chapter 4 was when I first thought, oh, what's this?
So did you get the free drop for chapter 4, or did you miss the free drop?
No, I missed the free drop.
Mm,
I missed the free drop. So my first purchase was chapter 4.
okay.
Yeah, my first Aku purchase was of chapter 4, and I'm like, oh, but this was free. I'm like, oh, but I'm like, oh, well, what can you do? And I thought, oh, okay, this looks first drew me in because I thought, oh, this looks really interesting. So it's really interesting. I'm like, oh, yeah, and it was something completely different. Nobody was doing it, or it just hadn't kind of been done before. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. Let me. Okay, I'm gonna go to Nifty Gateway and I'm gonna get a chapter 4. I got the chapter 4, and once again, I showing the other half. I said, look at this. She was like,
right.
you know, bleep, 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 bleep. And I'm like, no. This is really interesting. This is really interesting.
So I know I'm not sure. Are you a moon god now? Or
I'm a Moon God now. Yeah,
you are?
still are,
So
yeah.
that's a big decision, especially like, obviously chapter 1, 2, and 3 are kind of, that holy trinity of
Yeah,
piecing
yeah.
together the moon god. So you buy chapter 4 and you get fluff. Now you decide like what made it where you were like, I'm gonna get moon god. And
Yeah, I was looking at, as I said, I picked up chapter 4, and then I was just kind of around the community and saw which other people kind of had these Akus and the kind of the chapters. I'm like, oh, well, seems interesting. And then I looked at, okay, well, chapter 3, 1 and 2, I looked at the stats for them, and I'm like, maybe I should get a chapter 3.
yeah.
And then, so then I picked up a chapter 3, and then I'm like, oh, I don't have any kind of funds really to get a chapter 1 or 2 now. I said, okay, I'll give it a minute. And then I sold, I'm sure it was some Top Shots.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure it was some Top Shots on an open market. And then I used that to buy 1 and 2. And then I had 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then from then I was on the releases. I was there on Nifty Gateway, picking them up.
Mm-hmm.
Picking them up. As I said, some of the other things I'd kind of lost a bit of interest in. My focus was, oh right, I've got to get another. Yeah, I've got to get another Aku. And I told a couple of my friends, I said, oh yeah, this Aku thing. And then they came in like I think chapter 5, and I'm like, oh yeah.
What about the apes? Did we get on to the apes?
I was A plus.
A
I
plus.
laughed at all the apes. I was completely A plus. I told some of my friends said to me, "Oh, we should let's get an ape." I said, "What's the point? What is the point in getting an ape?"
Yeah.
I said to them, "Do you know what we should do? If we want to do it, let's all kind of put some ETH together and let's get a punk. Let's get another punk,
Right.
and we could call that like our group punk." And everybody's like, "Oh, the punks are like 8 ETH for the floor punk." I'm like, no. That's all right. That'll be all right. 8 ETH will be all right. And they're like, oh, no. Ape is like 1 ETH and 2 ETH. I'm like, oh, no. Don't worry about things. Let's get another punk. And then we passed on both. And at that point, I picked up another punk. That's why I got another punk.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like punks are just the standard, like if you know type of,
yeah.
Like if there's something major that I would like to have, it would be the punks. I've been very vocal about not being a fan of the apes or the mutants. I love what Yuga has done, and it's kind of one of the few shining stars in our ecosystem of success. Of course, it also puts a lot of pressure on every other project, because every other project is like, well, what do we do to become that? Whereas Punks was just very organic, and of course, Punks is now owned by Yuga. I feel like there's more longevity, just from a nostalgic and collectors.
And there's nothing you have to do with a punk. A punk is just a punk, right? It's not a board ape which gets you something else, And there's nothing wrong with that. Wrong with that. But for me, a punk was just a punk, and it's just a punk. That's all I could do. That was the beauty of it.
Yeah.
That thing where it's just a punk. Okay, you like it? Okay, you like it. If you don't like it, okay, you don't like it. It's just a punk. It's not a, well, have you got an ape, or where are you with the ape thing, or
Mhm.
have you got a mutant ape or another ape, or
So you've got this. I mean, like having a punk is kind of a big deal. You definitely have a pretty solid collection beyond punks and Aku. What made you decide to kind of go with Aku as like your profile? Because now, especially in Web3 Twitter, like it's kind of not all in part a flex, but like you have a decision, because you can
yeah.
be all these groups. So what was it? What made you change from having the punk as your profile? Not like this is a huge deal, like oh
Mm.
my god, but to sit there and go with Aku.
Um, I just like what it stood for. I just like what it stood for. That it was that all kind of inclusive. Everybody can make it. Everybody can do it. And I just looked. I like I like the look of that Aku as well. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna change it. And then I thought, no, I'm not gonna change it. I'm gonna keep my punk. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm gonna change it. And I press the button and I change it over. And I'm like, okay, yeah, brilliant. This is it. This is my profile. This is my profile. So it will take something really big to change that profile.
So this is gonna. I want to ask this question but I do think it sounds kind of probably silly. Is there a difference in how Aku is viewed, like from a European perspective versus like an American? Because like here, certainly baseball, with Micah, that's a very American dominant sport,
Mm,
and what our country, not to say like the social injustice and everything is solely connected to America. It's everywhere.
mm.
But is there a bit of a what kind of perspective coming from an Englishman like yourself versus like what an American sees in this project, in this vision?
Um, I would say probably the visibility isn't quite the same over here in the UK in
Hmm.
regards to Aku, in regards to kind of what it stands for, and how people view things. I suppose from a UK perspective is, I suppose, is different. If they saw a punk, they would kind of know what a punk is. If they saw Aku, it would be one of those things you'd have to be in the know
Hmm.
in the UK to I suppose to see and recognize Aku and to understand what it kind of stands for and to know who Micah Johnson is, etc., etc. Because as you said, baseball's not really a sport that is followed. I
Hmm.
suppose, yeah, it's not really a sport that's followed in the UK. You more have NBA and then probably NFL, and then that's it probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, for US sports, everything else is.
Well, it's so I grew up in the South, and you know, the main message, can a black kid become an astronaut? You
Hmm,
know, I now live in Los Angeles, where interestingly enough, like the people that have grown up in California, especially my age, like don't really have an understanding. Like it seems ridiculous. Like, why would a kid ask like that? Where I grew up,
hmm,
in the South, like on the heels of, you know, like the civil rights, Jim Crow, go all that's the bedrock. Like that's a big deal. That
hmm.
message, and that's kind of what I was getting at. Like in England, like is that a message that kind of rings true?
Yeah, I think in England, and I think globally, it's probably the same message. I think it's probably the same message, and people kind of will get that message and understand it, whether or not they will get the message and understand it, and whether they appreciate it is something different altogether. But that
Right.
I'll say globally, that message is there. From a UK perspective, I'd say that same message is there, and people kind of get the message that if that's being portrayed.
Hmm.
Yeah, but whether or not they really believe in the actual message, or whether or not they think whether or not they even think it is a message, because some people, you could look at it and think, well, actually, it's just somebody going to the moon, right? It's just somebody going to the moon. It's just actually somebody going to the moon. It could be anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So
like,
for
like
me,
it's like it's just the commonality, I think, comes where it's like it's just a kid with a dream, and
yeah,
that's that globally
yeah,
can be recognized. And then
yeah,
here we might have like a little bit more of an impact, if you will, just because of the culture and societal dynamics that
yeah.
we live through and, and keep progressing. Um, this podcast has certainly covered all of the journey of Aku, and from the mint of the Aku Tars and the big run up, certainly the contract. In this last year, the whole space of NFT and Web3 has not been immune to this super, super duper cold winter that we're
Yeah.
experiencing. And I've I can say for me personally, I'm less involved, I guess, in the community, but that's across the board. Like
Hmm.
I was in a lot more discords and active. Um, what is your sentiment? Like, where do you kind of fall? Like, are you still kind of active, or are you just kind of is there some remnants of like 2017 and that ICO boom, and you kind of it's kind
Yeah.
of like you went through the first war. Now,
Yeah. This is so. I'm just thinking that you kind of got as usual. You kind of got to stick around.
Mhm.
It's not to say that you have specific projects or you have specific things that you've got that have got your interest that you always pop in and pop out of. Like Aku, I'll always be kind of around or pop in. As long as it's there, I'll always pop in or pop out or always be there. The same way, like you could just reach out to me and I could just reach out to you. That was through Aku, right?
Mhm.
That was from that original meeting from the Aku.
Yep.
So there's some projects that are always going to be that you'll pop in and pop out, but then you end up being very selective with your time and what actually you're going to engage with and what you're not going to engage with. And for me, I say this winter is brings you back to that selective stage across crypto, across the metaverse, across Web3. Is I'm very selective with my time. I'm very selective of what I spend my time on or who I speak to or what I engage in. Otherwise, you end up just completely losing track of everything else or not seeing kind of what's important. But on the same note, is if you don't stick around or if you don't still have that kind of keen eye, then you kind of will end up missing out. As we know, crypto punks were there for ages, right?
Mm.
Some things were just there for ages and just sitting there, and nobody was really interested in them. And I think we're kind of at that stage again now where things are just sitting there. Nobody's really interested. But that's not to say things aren't happening or people aren't building or nothing's happening in the background. But as we know, things take time. Winter comes and then winter goes. For the
Right.
people that kind of stick around through the winter, you get eventually that summer comes, and then if you played the game or if you still kind of had the ear to the ground during the winter phases, you'll be all right come the summer.
How do you feel about the uh, like where we're at with the Aku project? I mean, you know, I mean, to me, anyone that's in the know,
Mm.
um, it's much quieter,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
not quiet. It's not puppy dogs and rainbows, as I like to call it.
yeah,
It's kind of like I guess it could be toxic, but at the same time, there's a lot of gripes that are warranted. Um, where do you fall in that? Because I don't hear much from you anymore, and that's
mm.
not a bad thing. There's a
Yeah,
lot of us OG
yeah,
that were there in Miami and have
mm.
been around for the ride, and I think that we've been around for so long. It's like it's kind of like being in a high school. You don't have to go to all the events.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
still a part of the school.
yeah, yeah. I think with Aku Pacific, yes, I pop in and pop out. I would just say that Aku's building.
Hmm.
Yeah, Aku's building, and you've kind of got to go through a lot of these teething kind of problems, teething issues, build, and sometimes what you build or what you start building that first time isn't necessarily what you want, isn't the big picture, first of all. Sometimes you come back and rebuild and say, well, actually, this is I've kind of hit that sweet spot now. So for me, Aku is in that building stage, and I'm happy for it to build. I'm happy for it to build, which is why I'm still a Moon God, which is why I still got all the chapters, etc., etc. So I'm happy for it to. I'm happy to sit and let it build, and let's see what comes out the other end.
When I first, came across and started buying the chapters and kind of jumped on this wagon, it's interesting because I think if you were early enough, and by early, I mean during the chapter release era.
Yeah.
I did not really, this was not like, certainly not a get rich, but like, I was kind of like, this is something that's going to take a couple of years.
Yeah.
The windfall could be huge. However, we had this massive run up with the Akutars and the Mint, and of course, I still think even if that had gone flawlessly, like we would still,
we'll still be here. We'll still be here now.
I probably not as low, but like, there's a lot of blood in the street.
Yeah.
So my one thing that I struggle with, and I'm just curious what you would do is, you said earlier about, telling other people about Aku and kind of not necessarily, pushing them in, but turning them on. Right. And there were so many things in those chapter days that just, man, like you, I could, if I didn't know you and I was telling you what Aku was, I could sit there and I'd say, there's the movie deal, Time Magazine, so many potentials, and it was an easy convince. And then once you hear the story, it seems like we've definitely lost that. And while and rebuild is a great word to describe where we're at, but at the same time, like there's a bit of like, that's not exactly what I signed up for. Like I signed up for all the stuff in those first, chapters coming out. That's what I was in here for. The backpacks giving out, the philanthropy aspect, great. Awesome. But that's not what excited me about, and that's not what brought me in. So where do you fall with that?
I kind of fit on just I'm happy with the chapters. This is the thing. Yeah, I'm happy with the chapters. Could things have gone differently? Could things and should things have gone differently? I would probably say yes. Am I in the know enough to know what really going on in the background, etc., etc.?
Right.
No. Am I comfortable enough just to sit and let it ride out? Yes. So then, am I okay with Aku as a general project, even though the things that were lined up haven't come to pass as yet? I'm going to say they haven't come to pass as yet. That's the best way to put it. Then, yes. Anything I get involved in, my number one thing is, am I comfortable to be able to hold it if I want to hold it, and does it affect my day? That's the key thing. When I wake up in the morning, does it affect my day? If it affects my day, then it's not for me to hold, and I shouldn't be there. Yeah. That's my number one thing in anything for NFTs, for metaverse, for crypto, for anything. If it really affected my day, I'm happy with the chapters. Yes. Do I still look at the chapters? Yes. Have we delivered what the original premise was for Aku? No, not as yet. I'm going to bracket that and say not as yet. Does it affect my day at the minute? No.
So the Moon Gods all decided that you get to wear the hat for the day and run the ship of Aku. What's the number one thing you want to see delivered from the Aku project?
The number one thing I'd want to see delivered is, for me, it's some kind of cartoon. It's some kind of show. Some kind of show that will get that global recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if not the if I suppose it's not multiple things, it's one thing that will get that global recognition, because based on the chapters, based on the Time magazine, based on all of the things, based on the talk about Disney and all of these other loads of different talk, I think it's the thumb kind of show, and based on what the chapters delivered and what the chapters done, there would be enough to have a kind of Aku show program / cartoon out there.
Mm-hmm. You know,
Out there.
it's I mean, I grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons, He-Man, G.I. Joe, the old, or Bugs Bunny, and especially the ones that were geared towards not just comedy, like not just Bugs Bunny, but like more story driven. Like He-Man comes to mind. There was always, like He-Man at the end of the show, like with the message, or G.I. Joe, and they're like after school messages. And I think that cartoons, the scripts write themselves. Like the stories have been
it's the same.
the pictures changed, the story stays.
Yeah.
And for Aku, like there's never been, a character like him. I mean, I'm not familiar enough to say Fat Albert, was like a representation, but this is like like this is different, this is modern. And I agree with you. Like I've been saying, can we just get the movie in? I live in Hollywood. I understand that it's hard, but it's not, like it's not hard to get like something going. If it's I get, how do I put it? It's not hard.
But is that the thing on the list? Is that the number one thing on the list that they want to do? If that's not the number one thing on the list that they want to do, then it's hard to do that, right?
Yeah.
So the priorities, isn't it?
Well, I think it's not that hard. But the problem is the IP and the right. And I've always been one of my favorite sayings has always been, would you rather half a watermelon or one whole grape?
Yeah.
And in order to go to that route, because let's be clear, like if that 35 million went into the Aku, DAO or treasury or whatever, that's not even close to being able to do a movie. A Pixar movie is $100 million. So you were always, if this was the bigger picture, you were always going to have to do something. Like the video game and play to earn is very chic, but like that's super hard. Like Grand Theft Auto 6 is supposed to be coming out whenever, and how long is it taking to develop, and there's so for me, like I think there is a deal that's on the table. It's not the deal that you probably want, but down the road, like get it started, get the attention. So and hell, I just want to see it, like
this is the thing. Sometimes you just got to do it and be out there. You've got to get something out there, and that's why for me the kind of movie, the show thing is because it's got the backstory already, right? The chapters is already the backstory. That leads everything back to the chapters, and then you have a movie, and then it's like, well, actually, but to not give up the IP, or not the whole of the IP, could be, there's many ways to skin a cat. So I think sometimes you have to accept the position that you're in and you move forward that. Sometimes I wake up and I look at the NFTs I have and I look at them, I'm like, oh, you idiot. But I have to accept that. I accept that I have them, and I'm just like, oh, okay, fair enough. Now move on.
So we need to start wrapping it up a little bit, but I mean, a really simple question. When does the bull run start, and when will be the top, so that we all know when to sell and make a lot of money? It's an easy question. Go ahead, answer.
Okay. Let me check ChatGPT now. When does the bull run start? let's see. I'm thinking it's very boring now. At the
Yeah.
minute, very boring now, and people are getting bored, and people are falling off. People are falling away. So
But is this something similar to the ICO? Was that kind of a?
yeah, this is exactly the same.
It's the same.
Everything feels like how it felt last time. Everything feels like how it felt last time to me. It's like, well, everybody's kind of, we went through the whole ICO craziness and wow, ICO, oh wow, oh what, you done? Oh great, and then all of a sudden it just went into this massive lull of nothingness where nothing was going on, everything was just down, 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 and then you kind of just, if you held through, if you made it through that period, then you were right at the other side of it. This feels like that. This feels like that. Actually, it feels like that. Some parts a bit worse, some parts a bit better. Because technically, NFT wise, they've kind of, some of the NFTs have kind of held some value depending on when you came in and when you came out.
Right.
So this feels like better. Before with the whole ICO thing, everything was just zeroed out.
Right.
Apart from everything got zeroed out and it gave you an opportunity. I think this time now is once again it's really bad, but there's opportunities there, and I think probably maybe by the end of the year, if they stop putting up interest rates, I don't want to get into the macro stuff. If they stop putting up interest rates, etc., and all of a sudden they cut interest rates, then I think it goes crazy. If Hong Kong / China come back in properly, nothing happens straight away, but I think gradually,
Yeah.
end of the year.
You know, I would. I mean, I'm just grasping at straws, but like, I think election years are always big for everything, and that'll be 2024. So we get through this year, and then who knows what kind of fun the American elections will have for 2024. We'll have to see. I appreciate everything, and I always like to kind of finish the show on some lighter notes. Now I'm going to preface this by saying that my mother and my mother used to live in Banbury near Oxford. My grandmother's from Liverpool, and then my grandfather's from Ireland. Why does English food get such a bad rap? Like, do you enjoy traditional English food, or is it, or do you find yourself like really needing to get Italian or Chinese or something?
To be honest, I enjoy traditional Caribbean food.
Caribbean, yes.
Yeah. That's what I enjoy. And to go along with that, I probably don't mind a Sunday roast now and again.
Yeah, I lived in Dublin for about 6 months 20 years ago, and I loved lunch. We had a cafeteria. I was on a TV network campus, and it was like turkey and mashed potatoes and gravies, and like pork one day or meat. Like this is exactly what I want to eat. Like I didn't think it was bland at all. I love gravies, and then I got introduced to blood pudding, and thank God I found out what it was after I ate it. But like even that, I was like, this is good stuff, And I also wanted to bring up, is Ted Lasso in the culture? Like, is Ted Lasso the TV show on your radar?
I've heard people talk about it, but I've never seen it.
So, it's an American football coach that ends up coaching a Premier League team,
right,
in Richmond, and I would love to know what like the British culture kind of thinks of it, because I think it's hilarious and it's actually a very good thought out show. But it's got that mix of British humor with Midwestern Kansas football.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. I will actually check it out. Fun enough, I'll check it out.
So we end the show every time with 2 questions. My first question is, being across the pond, what is the one place that you would like to visit that you haven't been to that would kind of be weird. Like if if you kind of threw it out there and people be like, really, that's where you'd like to go? Because not something typical like the pyramids or the Eiffel Tower, but
Antarctic.
there it is, Antarctic.
Antarctic. Yeah.
They got
Yeah.
cruises.
Yeah, I know. That's where I want to go. Yeah. Maybe next year or the year after. That's somewhere I want to go.
Do you want to
Somewhere I
step
wanna go.
foot on the Antarctic or just?
Oh yeah. 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 Fully thermal, fully jacketed. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
step on, feed
Well,
the
see,
local.
the problem with going to Antarctica is if you go there, then you have to go to the other 6 continents, so you can say you've been to all 7 continents because you've gotten the Holy Grail, the
Yeah,
hardest one to get to.
yeah. But I think one step at a time though.
One step at a
Do the
time.
Antarctic first,
Yeah,
and then we can move forward from there.
excellent. And if there was someone that you would like to see us have on the show that you have a connection to could help us have them as a guest on the show, who would you like to see as one of our future Moon God guests?
Probably Jamie from Outlaw Adventures.
Okay. Well, you got
Yeah,
to you're recorded now. This is going to be
yeah.
live for the world to see, so you're on the hook.
I'll try and reach out. I'll reach out.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I'll reach out.
Well,
But before we go,
yes, please.
before we go, the whole bull run stuff, it's about being in just before the bull run.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about being before the bull run, not the bull run. You got to be banner before the bull run. You got to hang on till just before the bull run, and if you're doing something, that's the time to do it just before the bull run. So hang in there. To all the people out there, hang in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that come to mind. It's, was buy the rumor, sell the news. Like that's, pivotal in this space. And also, if you believe in the technology in art or whatever it is that, I there's no way that any of this goes away. It's not like a Beanie Baby,
Yeah.
that's going to lose interest in, be gone, or a TV show even that gets canceled, because ratings die and you never, hear about it. Like, I definitely think that this is, one of the cornerstones of what's going to bring the future. Now, how that technology works, going forward,
It's a
that's
different question. Yeah.
whoever figures that out. And if you're, on the same boat as that person, you're going to win pretty big.
Yeah. Put your Aku helmet on.
Yes.
To the moon.
Easy enough. Well, guys, if you've stuck around this long, always we appreciate your viewership. Comment, share, like, do all those things. Help us grow. Help us spread the word of Aku Web3. This is the future, and these are the men that are, got the picks and shovels that have been here, the OGs. I appreciate you so much, and getting up early in London for us, for England, and that will do it for another episode of Moon God Pod.
And I was trying to shout out to my fellow Arsenal fans.
Arsenal.
Come on, you Gooners.
See, I bring up Ted Lasso, a fictional Premier League team, which is now my favorite team. But Arsenal. All right. When's the last time you guys won anything?
2021 FA Cup.
Oh, really? Well, that's not that long ago. You should have been quicker to answer than 2021.
Yeah, I think it was 2020 or 2021 FA Cup was our last thing we won.
I'll just say, like, for Americans, like when I was in college 20 years ago, and I would see Arsenal and Manchester United jerseys or kits were the only ones that I ever saw. And some would wear Newcastle, but that was just because of the beer.
Right.
So we're slowly coming along for soccer. I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think soccer is going to make it a big splash. And the MLS is just, it's just subpar soccer, or football. There was a guy that played for the Galaxy, Zoltan. Did I say that? you're familiar with?
Zlatan, Ibrahimovic, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was crazy because he came over to the Galaxy. Two quick soccer stories. And when he came here, LeBron sent him a jersey like as a welcome to LA, and he
Okay.
signed it with his name and sent him back the jersey to LeBron, which is like the coolest move ever.
Mm,
And then he was being interviewed, and they asked him something. He said, "Well, I'm the greatest player in the MLS," and they're like, "Well, this player over here has like better stats, blah blah blah," and he was like, "Yeah, but I'm, however old he was like, this poor kid's in his prime and he's playing in the MLS. In my prime, I'm playing,
yeah.
overseas. So whenever we can get a legit actual player in their prime to play in America, till then it's gonna be hard sledding. So, but
One step at a time. One step at a time.
we got the NBA. So,
yeah.
But
Who's
anyway,
gonna win? Who's gonna win? Denver?
yeah,
Miami?
I don't
Denver
even. I'd like to see it be competitive at least, but Denver's been the best team, and that Jokic is just for someone so slow to be so amazing. To be so slow in one of the fastest games. But who so anyways.
Cool.
Well, that's going to do it for the Moon God Pod. We will see you next time.